The internet is at war with a giant company. Now, that might be a little bit too vague. We might be talking about the internet versus Meta. We might be talking about the internet versus any number of large companies. But today we're talking about the internet versus Stack Overflow and OpenAI. So, this kind of started several weeks ago when OpenAI and Stack Overflow released a joint press release about their basically joining of forces. Essentially, what they announced was that Stack Overflow was going to give OpenAI access to a ton of data, and OpenAI was going to give Stack Overflow access to their models. So essentially, what Stack Overflow gets out of this is they get to build an AI model on top of all of the different data that they've collected from users, and OpenAI gets access to a ton of very useful data. Now, I'm going to kind of talk through what is in it for OpenAI a little bit more specifically here. Basically, what OpenAI gains from this is they gain a massive data set. Like we're talking billions and billions of posts, comments, questions, answers, things like that. But not only are they gaining access to the raw data, they're getting access to all of the answers that have been tagged as correct. If you know anything about machine learning or anything about artificial intelligence or data science in general, you know that tagged data, like data that has been verified to be a correct answer in this case, is incredibly useful. We're also talking about great input for large language models specifically because we're talking about people speaking in different languages, people speaking relatively fluently, we would suppose. If you've read any Stack Overflow answers, you know that that may not always be the case, but they're gaining access to a ton of very, very useful data specifically for large language models. So OpenAI is really getting access to a treasure trove here. And Stack Overflow gets access to the best models humanly possible so that they can build. I can't even remember what they said their AI was supposed to be called. It's probably something cringy. But Stack Overflow gets access to, some amazing models that they're going to use to build probably some kind of chat bot that's going to try to triage answers or something like that. Now, we can look at this from the optimistic viewpoint. If OpenAI gets access to all of this data, maybe their models get better. Maybe they start giving us better answers. Maybe they start giving developers specifically better answers, which would be arguably a great thing. If Stack Overflow gets access to these models, maybe Stack Overflow gets better. Maybe these low quality questions get answered before they enter the public space. Maybe we can get our own questions answered by somebody who's a little bit kinder than your average person who answers questions on Stack Overflow. We can also look at this from the pessimistic point of view. And this is what I kind of tried to touch on a little bit on my blog on this subject. I'll leave a link down in the description. I'm going to go a little bit less in depth here than I did in my blog, but I kind of want to get these thoughts out. So before I was kind of conscious of the internet, before I entered the internet, there was an era where things were a little bit more optimistic about what the internet was going to be, what the future of the internet was going to be. There were people who believed that the information that was posted on the internet was going to be free. There were people who believed that the internet was going to be this great source of collaboration, and for a while it was. But when the money entered, all of a sudden, the focus shifted from how can we create this awesome collaborative space for people to interface with each other and for people to create new knowledge and create new things, and it shifted over to how can we capitalize on this? How can we capture this space and create a space that generates profit? And that had good effects in that the economy blew up twice. The dot-com bubble burst and then it happened again, and we're all kind of living through both the good and the bad of that. But it also turned into a detriment. All of a sudden, this space was captured by interests that were not necessarily focused on people's well-being, that were not necessarily focused on the betterment of the world. And the reason why people, specifically on Stack Overflow, are pissed is because they were trying to create a space where knowledge was more collaborative. They were trying to create a space where people just gave answers because that was the right thing to do. It was helping people. And sure, maybe they gained some credit, maybe they gained something to put on their resume, but at the end of the day, really it was about collaboration. It was about giving people answers to the questions that they needed to grow. And they're pissed because now $1 trillion company is taking all of these answers that they've put their heart and soul into, all of this effort that they've put forth, and they're capitalizing on that. OpenAI is going to make a ton of money off of this. Stack Overflow is going to make a ton of money off of this. and the people answering the questions are not. They're not getting rewarded. They're just basically given a thank you for your collaboration, moving on. And one could also argue, too, the end result of this is probably going to be a worse internet, at least for a little while. For a while, the internet is going to be just slammed with god awful answers to questions. It's going to get slammed with misinformation because that's what ChatGPT has done everywhere else. That's what's happened on Twitter. That's what's happened on Instagram. That's what's happened literally in every social space that ChatGPT has entered. Misinformation has been spread, and bad information has been spread, and low quality information has been spread. So the folks on Stack Overflow are looking at this like, hey, we were trying to create a better place by collaborating and by creating these articles and by giving answers to questions. And now you're taking our efforts, capitalizing on them, and the end result is a worse internet. What the hell? So you can kind of understand both sides. Me personally, you can probably guess where I land on all of this, but it's going to be an interesting discussion to see played out because the discussion at the end of the day is not just about Stack Overflow versus OpenAI versus the internet. The question is a much larger question than that of how are we going to ensure that the internet that is created from this AI boom is a better place for people to be? How are we going to ensure that the people who are creating information that's being fed into this AI are properly thanked at the very least? How are we going to ensure that the internet that we leave behind after all of this is in any way, shape, or form better? The world that is created from this internet boom, how is it going to get any better from this? I would argue it's not. And that's kind of my stance, viewpoint on this. This, at the end of the day, is not a legal struggle. Nobody's going to sue OpenAI and Stack Overflow. And when, let's be honest here, they're going to have the money to beat down any kind of legal battle that gets built in front of them. This is not an ethical battle per se. Like, one could kind of argue different parts of it are an ethical battle. At the end of the day, this is a battle over values, and it's what you value. Do you value the profit that's going to be grown from this, or do you value a free and open internet that has information that's actually useful? That's probably a biased take, but that's kind of where I land on it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Take it easy. Peace.